I said we were going to look at some gaming hot takes today. I want to kind of look into a couple of these. So this first one is from the subreddit of Starfield, and it's a guy that's describing his process of going to a Best Buy and getting greeted by other people that were also very excited for the game. So first things first, just purchased new Xbox for Starfield. The experience was wild. The hype for this game is unreal. ... Too much? Nah, this is fun. You guys know me. I think hype is generally a bad thing because it makes you stupid. It turns, it puts the stupid glasses and goggles on so you ignore warning signs. But there's no denying, hype is fun. It's fun to be hyped over something, especially in a community that's also hyped about it. It's just entertaining. It's just fun. It feels good. And I'm not going to deny that. Like, obviously, that's the case. So as it goes on, as the title states, I recently went to my local Best Buy to purchase an Xbox Series X. Felt like my high school days browsing the gaming section. What I found incredible is that I was in the checkout line to get the Xbox, and the guy in line next to me turns to me and asks/states, "That's for Starfield, right?" Then I get to checkout. The employee asks the same thing. After chatting with the 4 people in the vicinity about it, how they're going to play PC versus Xbox, wives, girlfriends are excited too. On my way out, another employee yells, "Don't forget to pre-install when you get home." For one, I want to know where he's at that Best Buy employees are so cheerful and chipper. Last time I went into a Best Buy, it looked like I was at a funeral. Everybody, I felt so bad for those employees. They all looked like they wanted to die. So he's in like the Willy Wonka chocolate factory of Best Buys. Apparently they're all so chipper about it. But I'm not doubting this story. Might be a little exaggerated, but still. But still, the hype for this game is unreal and fun. It's great finding an online community, but this experience brought me back to the days when you had to go pick up physical games, consoles, accessories, extra memory, etc. in store. Games were released and there was a frenzy at the local game store to grab a copy. That authentic connection and excitement, sharing interests and what you read about a certain feature. The shared energy in that story, and everyone can't wait to get home and play and explore, albeit this was only maybe 5 people and the store was pretty empty, so not quite there, but it gave me those vibes as we chatted for a few minutes there in that moment. Been a long while since I experienced that, and it was great. I love the shared excitement for this game. And then the first upvoted comment, 32 days, 19 hours. People are counting it. And listen, this is like, these are the posts that actually make me pause and go, like, should I stop with like the keep your hype in check videos? Should I stop with the let's think about this more critically videos? Because it's true, this stuff is fun. It just is. It is fun to be really excited to have a community of people that are all together in this exciting venture. And it does take you back to your childhood days when things were simpler, when you were just super pumped. And honestly, if the game wasn't that good, it didn't really matter because it was the one game you got for the summer or for the fall and Christmas. So you just are excited for it. And it doesn't really matter how well it delivers. You're going to be playing the crap out of it no matter what, right? We've all had games like that where I remember I was so hyped for Assassin's Creed 3 back in the day. I finally got it. I played it and I was like, this isn't amazing, but I'm having a good time. And I played the crap out of that game when it launched. And so it's posts like these that make me pause and go, should I just like chill out? Am I really helping by trying to calm people down? Or am I just kind of harshing their mellow? Am I just bringing more negativity to the space than is worth it? And I've gone back and forth on it. But the reason why I continue to put those videos out is because I think that the like rationality and reason matters, especially when people are paying money for a product. If this game was just going to be free to play, I don't think it matters that much. I just wouldn't bother. But because we're talking about people paying for early access with like a $38 upgrade or maybe $32 upgrade fee, even if they have Game Pass, or signing up for Game Pass, or this guy going and buying a new console just for the game. All of this stuff, like people are spending a lot of money, which is kind of a big deal, especially economically right now, for a game that is probably going to be pretty good, but that also has some other warning signs, and I think that you should evaluate a little more critically. And I'm not telling anybody they're not allowed to be excited. Like, you can be excited. I'm just asking that we don't get so hyped to the point that we refuse to acknowledge reality or look at things critically. Because again, when you're hyped about stuff, it puts those goggles on and you refuse to acknowledge or even see the warning signs that are coming up. And some people even go so far as to just smoke the copium straight, as we've seen with some of those people that are saying stuff like the lack of rovers is actually a really good thing. If there were rovers, that would be bad. So it's actually really good that there's no rovers to explore with, you know? And once you get to that level, like I said, we're probably just going to disagree about everything. Because you're going to excuse anything. It's the same thing with like people who are in a cult and you bring up like, hey, a lot of this doesn't make sense. And then they go, well, anything that doesn't make sense is either you misunderstanding it or it's like the devil convincing you. Like it reminds me of one thing when I was growing up. We went to a church and the pastor said, if you're speaking to an atheist and they start to make sense, that's the devil talking. And at the time I was like, that does make sense. Yep, that absolutely right. But you think about it and you're like, wait, so if you talk to somebody you disagree with and they start to convince you and make a good point, it's not that they're right. It's that the devil's deceiving you. So anybody that disagrees with you, if they start to make sense, it's the devil. You can never be wrong, right? And that's the same thing that happens when you're super hyped, is that there's always an excuse. There's always a reason to explain away this thing, even if it seems pretty bad on its face. Same thing with like people saying with the NVIDIA being dismissed out of Starfield. Starfield is going to be supporting AMD FSR2 and not DLSS as far as we know right now. That's the last news we have on it. And that to me is bad because, let's be honest, DLSS is way better than AMD FSR2. Like, it's not even close. It's so much better. It's ridiculous. So it's a bummer for me. It's a bad thing that they're not supporting DLSS. I think that's bad. But inevitably, the fanboys come out, the hyped people come out and say, oh, well, no, it's actually a good thing because with a partnership with just AMD, it means that they can fine tune the performance and this game will run even better now that the performance can be fine tuned with this very specific partnership they have. And so all of a sudden you're able to just excuse anything away. And once you've reached that point, you are very prone to being screwed over. And that's why being a little skeptical, withholding judgment until you're justified matters, because then you can't be a sucker as easily. A lot of people mix it up. A lot of people think it means being a cynical prick. A lot of people think it means just being hyper negative or fixating on the bad, like the troll we saw earlier in that video. But that's not what it is. It's simply not being hyped until there's adequate reason to be hyped. And with some games, I think there is reason. GTA 6, gonna be real. Rockstar doesn't miss. And they've spent, when all is said and done, probably $2 billion on GTA 6. Almost certainly that game is going to be considered one of the best games of all time. It just will be. We'll still look at it critically. We'll still see if there's any red flags or warning signs, because if there are, they're gonna be really, really funny, because the sycophants won't be able to stand it. But that game, I think you're justified at being really, really excited for, even though it hasn't technically been announced yet. But with Starfield, I do think there are reasons to look at it a little more critically. Let's look at this next one. This one I think is going to be a little more intriguing. Same thing as before, Starfield subreddit. Controversial opinion. People advising tempered expectations don't seem like longtime BGS fans. I think he's talking about me. So he's saying if people are telling you to temper your expectations, don't get too excited, they're not long-term BGS fans. Interesting. Let's hear him make his case. I've noticed that a lot of the context people... Okay, I don't know what that even means. I've noticed that a lot of the context people who advise tempered expectations provide seem to... Okay, maybe this... I don't want to beat up on this guy if his English is just not his first language. Provide seem to come from odd places. Ergo, the state of the gaming industry, buggy games at launch, look at Cyberpunk, the gunplay doesn't look like my favorite superhero shooter, etc. Okay, maybe I speak for more than a few here, but for longtime BGS fans who really enjoy the thoughtful worlds, fun in-game dynamics, and zany adventures their games provide, we don't care. We know that's the problem. Because a lot of us have been playing BGS games for over 15 years, some longer, that means a lot of us are reasonable adults who know the difference between being excited and speculating far-fetched, unrealistic content for a video game. I'd wager many people with those outsized expectations for Earth-sized cities or hyper-realistic AI that doesn't fall into the uncanny valley are actually not coming from long-time BGS fans. In fact, a lot of those people sound pretty young. The truth is, it's okay to be who you are. No one's going to disagree with that. Are you an aging gamer who's loved BGS games for a long time and is really excited about this new adventure? Cool. Samesies, dude. Are you a young gamer who didn't grow up with those experiences, but who is cautiously optimistic? That's awesome too. Are you someone who attacks devs, crashes people's fun and excitement, and also has a sense of entitlement over or around how a game should give you every single little thing you want? Well, maybe time to touch grass. Anyway, I think with just over a month away, I'm feeling excited, and I think you can feel like you can be too. See you soon in the settled systems, friends. So first of all, nobody's saying that you're not allowed to be excited, and nobody's saying that you can't be who you are. You're allowed to be who you are. I will not fight you on that. As for what's being said here, it seems like a couple little things. So it seems like he's upset. If you disagree with him, or if you're one of these people that wants you to temper expectations, he ties you to this: someone who attacks devs, crashes people's fun and excitement, and also has a sense of entitlement over how the game should give you every single little thing you want. I'm sure there are people like this. But I don't think people who are trying to simply temper expectations are attacking devs or are directly trying to crash your fun. If somebody telling you temper your expectations and don't expect this to be the second coming of Todd Howard, if that crashes your fun and excitement, respectfully, like, that's not anybody's fault but your own. Like, that probably says that your expectations are too high if tempering them ruins your fun, right? Right? Like, okay. And then as for a sense of entitlement around how a game should give you every single little thing you want, yeah, if somebody's saying it needs to have like hyper realistic AI or Earth-sized cities and stuff, yeah, that's very unrealistic. But he also says that these are young people. It just seems like this is a guy who's probably in his 30s, maybe 40s, has been playing a lot of BGS games and doesn't care about the negatives that they bring. And then he's upset that people are then coming in and saying that you should temper your expectations. Okay, dude. Okay. If you don't care about the bugs, if you don't care about the clunk, if you don't care about all of the other frustrations that people have expressed, cool. Good for you. But I also don't think that it's super helpful to tie people tempering expectations to this, equivocating them to people who attack devs, crash people's fun and excitement, and have a sense of entitlement. I don't think that's what these people are doing. Like, if you're just going to say people who are trolls and who are doing all of this don't seem like long-term BGS fans. Probably, yeah, because if they care about, like, bugs, if they care about glitches, if they care about performance, if they care about all these other things, they're probably not BGS fans. Just being real with you. And that's okay. Like, it's okay. Dude just wants to live in his Bethesda, can do no wrong world, and dunks on everyone who contradicts him. Maybe. Let's see, Ripper 1337. I think the temper expectations statement more applies to the people who are expecting mods on day one that are on par with what we have today in Skyrim or Fallout 4. Okay, yeah, if somebody's saying don't expect that mod ecosystem on day one, if that's who you're talking about with temper expectations, yeah, I would say like they're not bad for doing that. That's very reasonable. Temper those expectations. Or they're expecting mechanics like a stock market, giving the crew a percentage of credits you get from their salary with a slide bar or something along those lines, where the expectations aren't really based on what we've seen, but more on one line someone said and extrapolating something completely different from it. I'm excited AF for the game from just what we've seen and from my past experience with the vanilla Skyrim and Fallout experience. Yeah, I think this is one of the things that is really interesting about the Bethesda community. Like there's like two sides of it. There's the people that play these games vanilla and that love them for that. And then there's the people that play these games with tons of mods and stuff. And that's almost a totally separate group. And it's really, really interesting because these games don't, of course, ship with all of those mods and all of those adjustments and customizations. That comes over years and years and years of support from the community after the fact. And what's been interesting is like a lot of people, like I was talking to my buddy Caleb about this maybe a month ago, because he's one of those guys that plays Skyrim with all of the mods. Like he just kits it out and he goes crazy. He has all this crazy stuff equipped in his mod list. But he's never played the game vanilla and just played the game as they shipped it day one all the way through. He's just like, I just do the mods and stuff. And so for somebody like him, I don't expect him to have a really good time with something like Starfield on day one, maybe in a year or two, but day one, probably not if he relies on that so much. And people who play the vanilla games probably can have a really good time on day one. But it's interesting that the community is kind of split 50-50 because there are people that are just so heavy into the mod scene that they are probably not going to get what they're expecting on day one. Long-term fans have expectations based on decades of Bethesda games. They expect Skyrim/Fallout 4 in space, no more, no less. The unlikely expectations are from fans of other companies' games who are expecting Starfield to be an improved version of the other company's game. But keep the feature that made it inferior to Bethesda game. I'm expecting Starfield to be a Bethesda game. Not No Man's Sky, not Mass Effect, not Elite Dangerous with a BGS logo. And I think that's fair. What people are saying, and like a lot of this, I think like this person and I actually agree a lot more than I initially realized. Bethesda games have a certain, in Maddie's words, stank to them, right? They just have a certain look. They have a certain feel. They're always a little clunky. They're buggy. That's the Bethesda stank that some people love. It's like a good aged cheese. You know, you cut into it and you're like, oh, it smells like farts, but it's delicious. That's Bethesda, right? And somebody's going to cut that out of context, I swear to God. But that's okay. They know what they're getting and they like what that is. And that's all I'm trying to say. Like with all of this stuff, it's like Starfield is not magic. It's made by the same guys that did Fallout 4 and Skyrim and Fallout 3. And those games all have very unique vibes to them, very unique funk to them and a stank to them. And as long as you know what you're getting and what you're going into, okay. But there certainly are a lot of people in the Starfield community right now that are expecting it to be a lot more than it probably will be. And what I find interesting is like this guy is saying similar stuff, but he seems upset that anybody is telling him to temper expectations when all people that are saying that, like even the most hardcore BGS fans could be saying temper your expectations. It's BGS. It's not magic. They're not going to have a stock market. They're not going to go in there and have it so you can buy any apartment in the city. They're not going to have all of that stuff. It's going to ship and probably be a pretty solid game, but it's not magic. It's just not. So I think this person and I actually agree a lot. The reason though that people compare it to like No Man's Sky, Mass Effect, Elite Dangerous, all of those is because this is a game being developed by a AAA studio after years and years and years and years of development and tens of millions of dollars. And it's competing against these. Whether you like it or not, These are its contemporaries. These are its peers in this genre. So these are the games that people are going to compare it to. It just is the case. Like, love it or hate it, that's what it is. Now, just the same, exactly the same as with all of these other RPGs that are going to be coming over the next few years being compared with Baldur's Gate 3. You don't have to love it. It might be different in scope or scale or dev team or whatever, but it's in the same genre, so they get compared against each other because they're the peers, they're the contemporaries. I honestly think that the stank that people are looking for in a Bethesda game is probably also a big part of the nostalgia for games like Skyrim. I agree. Like, as far as I'm concerned, Skyrim's combat in vanilla Skyrim is pretty terrible. It's just really terrible. If you've not gone back to play it, it's pretty stanky. Okay, it's pretty clunky. However, that's okay. You can still have a great time with the game. Like, this is the thing. We can call out all these things that are not great or that have concerns or problems, and the game can still be awesome, okay? A game doesn't need to be a 10 out of 10, perfect, amazing, to be a good time, to still be fun. You know, it can still be enjoyable. Let's see. I'm not tempering anything all aboard the Todd train. I just don't understand this vibe, dude. I know he's kind of joking, but there's people with this general vibe. And I just don't get it because, like, Todd screwed you over so recently. I just don't understand it. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. The controversial thing to me in your post is the idea that long-term BGS fans can't have tempered expectations or be even slightly nervous about the game or the state of the game. I don't think that's fair on any level, and it is dismissive of real fears people may have. I think that's fair. Yeah, I'll give him that. I'm a long-time fan. I've pre-ordered. I'm hyped about the game and have been for years. I'm also worried about a few things. Will the frame rate be consistent? I'm not talking about 30 FPS. I don't care about that. I'm playing on PC. I mean, is whatever frame rate you're going to have, will it be consistent? Or is it going to fluctuate all over the place? With so many games within the game, will all of them mesh properly and work together well? With that said, there are people out there who are such skeptics, cheers, that they shred the game for mechanics they've never seen in action before. I mean, they don't say, I have a concern. They instead say that was a stupid decision without ever having played the game before. That's hate, not skepticism. Well, if we're talking about, again, genres specifically, like if you look at this and you compare it to, say, like the Rover thing, giving players a map effectively to explore that's the size of a planet, and then not giving them a means to navigate that efficiently, as far as I'm concerned, is stupid. I'll stand by that. I think that's stupid. I've not played the game, yes, but if you give me a map the size of Rhode Island, that I land on this planet and I can just go explore, but you're like, yeah, you have to walk on foot, even though you have a spaceship right there. That's stupid. The game could still be fun. The game could still be great. But let's call a horse. That's dumb. You just have to accept that you can't fly that ship over a mile that way to explore over there quickly. Cause reasons. Okay, that's stupid. That's just dumb. I would love for them to explain clearly why that decision was made, but we all know why that decision was made. It's because the engine can't keep up with it, not because that's what's best for the game. And that was reflected in, like, Todd's thing, where when he was asked about it, he was like, in some of the planets, you know, you use your boost pack and then you can jump, and some of our low gravity planets are just really fun. And that was his excuse for why there's no rovers or anything in the game. So I'm not convinced that that was a good choice. I would go so far as to say it's a stupid thing, especially because, again, there's the ship right behind you that you could fly over there to explore that you just can't. Or realistically, honestly, what they're probably going to do is they're going to do something like, oh, I can't set the ship here, we've got to keep it in orbit. So then he lands, you get off, and then the ship goes back up into the sky, so it's not sitting there. And they'll come up with some stupid story reason why it can't sit on the surface with you. That's my guess. It's going to be something really dumb. It's going to be a mod, yeah, and that's going to be one of the, like, really, really popular mods. JJ, I agree. No rover seems like an oversight. So it's up to BGS to prove me wrong and show me why we don't need rovers. Not confident I'll be convinced, but I'll keep an open mind. Yeah, and that's where I'm at. To me, it's just such, after playing other games in this genre, it is such a 101 basic thing that for them to not put it here is either a huge oversight or a huge blunder, or they've come up with some way of generating these maps dynamically when you land, such that a vehicle would actually harm the experience, like that New World creator said. And if that's the case, I'm very excited, because I would love for them to have come up with a brand new idea that's so fresh, where they're like, yeah, we don't even need those vehicles. Don't even need them. I'm not sure how that would work, but I would love for them to surprise me and convince me. As of right now, I just haven't seen anything that would get me there. So I would just say agree to disagree. I think that there is certainly a point where you can slide from skepticism into just being a cynic, and that's something where you have to be very, very careful not to fall into. And that just requires constant kind of checks and balances to make sure you're not doing that. I also think it's important how the quote tempered expectations thing is brought up. If it's brought up in a thread discussing the topic like this, or in one where someone is screaming, yeah, that cartoon had mechs in it and we are getting mechs, I think it's okay to voice concern or tell people to slow the roll a bit, respectfully. But if someone is showing their new controller or headset or screensaver and someone is popping into the thread and screaming, you guys need to tone it down, it's just a game, this isn't going to be as good as you think it is, well, that person's just trying to ruin someone's fun, and I don't think it's appropriate. I would agree. Yeah, those people are just trying to like be negative Nancy's. I would agree with that. I wouldn't call them a non-BGS fan. I would just call them a jackass. I would agree. Let's see, I'm pretty sure OP is referring to people saying Starfield will be a buggy mess like 76, and the people who believe the experience of completely unrelated studios is indicative of BGS. I think specifically, I've seen a few of these comments that are bringing up this comparison to other studios. The reason people do that and the reason people bring it up and compare it to like No Man's Sky again is because, love it or hate it, Starfield is entering into a genre that BGS has not entered before, and they will be compared to the contemporaries and peers. It's nobody's fault but Bethesda for entering this genre. It just is. In the same way that Ubisoft making Watch Dogs, putting it into the same genre as like Grand Theft Auto, they failed to live up to that standard, and the game feels bad as a result, because people are like, oh, the driving in GTA 5 is way better than in Watch Dogs, and the driving or the navigation, the AI, the NPCs, the world building, all this stuff is way better in Grand Theft Auto. Like, it just is the case, because when you enter the same genre, you go in amongst these peers and you will be compared with those peers. It doesn't really matter if you say, oh, well, this person had an unfair advantage, this dev studio did this, or they've got this history, or whatever. It's like if you go into a bodybuilding competition and you walk on stage and you enter in like the 200 plus category, and you've been lifting for 6 months, but you're going up against some meatheads who have been working out for 20 years and have, injected themselves with gorilla jizz and elk blood, I think is what Joey Diaz called it, elk blood straight into their bloodstream, and they're just roided out the ass. Their balls are just gone at this point. You're going to look terrible in comparison to them, because you stepped on that stage amongst those guys as your peers, and you can throw a fit. That guy, he has an unfair advantage. He's been doing this longer. Or that guy, he has more money than me, so he can afford better steroids or trainers or whatever. Nobody gives a crap. You walked on stage. You walked out there with those guys. You put yourself in this place where you're compared and competing with those guys. And that's the same thing BGS has done by stepping into this genre. So it's so dumb to me for people to be like, it's not fair to bring up what these other games have done. Like, yeah, they're different games from different studios, but they're in the same genre and they are the peers. What's fair is fair. Like, if BGS has god-awful facial animations when it launches, we get to call that out, because there are other contemporaries that have done it way better for the same price. right? It doesn't matter to the consumer. Other contemporaries have done it better. We get to call it out. It's just not fair to be like, oh, well, actually, it's a different studio and they weren't trying to have good, performance, and they weren't trying to get rid of all the bugs because that's just not what they prioritize. So it's not fair to bring it up and to talk about it. Like, it's just dumb. It's just special pleading is the term for it. It's just excusing this for this thing you like.
Super chatted $4.99.
Oh, baby.
Sorry I'm late. I was watching the Raven vs Dark Phoenix death battle. What did I miss?
Oh, baby.
Tears of joy, face with monocle.
Face with monocle. Thank you, my friend, for the $4.99. We've been talking about hot takes in the gaming industry and looking at some Starfield fans expressing frustrations for people telling them to temper expectations. This post, I appreciate this, just coming out and saying it, being direct. What are your unreasonable expectations for Starfield? I appreciate clarifying that they're not like trying to do this. This is just fun. I had no problem with this. If you're just going to come in and have fun with this, like, cool, awesome, I love it. This isn't another temper your expectations thread. It's almost the reverse of that. See, I keep seeing posts where people bang on about overinflated expectations and how we are inevitably going to be disappointed on release. And it occurs to me that I couldn't really think of any such expectations apart from the few posted in jest. So I thought it might be a fun idea to collect these unreasonable expectations together into one thread and take a critical look at them, maybe determine what had been ruled in or ruled out, and perhaps most importantly, how bad it would be if expectations thing did not in fact happen, because most of mine I'd be fine with. My main unconfirmed expectations are free flight between planets in the same system, 1-to-1 planet scaling, and aliens. Aliens, I think narratively there's probably aliens in the game that they're just keeping hidden. As of right now, we haven't seen anything like that, but I would guess narratively there's probably something like that, some higher life form or species or civilization or whatever. But same thing, I don't think that really matters if it's not in the game. 1-to-1 planet scaling, I think this has all been, I mean, it has been clearly confirmed that it's not in the game, but I don't think that this is in the game. Plus, it wouldn't even matter if the planet scales, because from what Todd has said, they're generating the planets like when you land, and then they place objects around that. So I don't think that that's actually how that works. And then as for free flight to planets within the same system, it just depends. Honestly, I don't think Starfield's going to have the ships fly very quickly, so I don't think that this will be in, but let's see. Expectations. I'm kind of looking forward to flying around the planets and moons and setting up cool screenshots. I'm looking forward to lurking on trade routes out in the dark and waiting for a fat, undefended merchant man to come past. I want to sweep through the fringes of a system just to see if some derelict hulk or interesting asteroid pigs on the radar. Or pings. Pigs. Asteroid pig. Pings the radar. Pigs. I was like, asteroid pigs? That seems interesting, sure. I think it'd be cool. I'm going to assume some sort of time compression, because not even Kerbal makes you do spaceflight in real time. Come on, guys. And that jumping between planets is available for the impatient. Maybe. I mean, it's just, people forget how much freaking space is between planets, even in our own solar system. It's outrageous. Millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of miles. It's crazy how spread out things are. Like if you're on Earth and you want to look off and figure out where Jupiter is, you barely see it. On a good night, it's very clear at certain times of year, you can see a little pinprick of light. You can, but it's not that easy. So it's just, we're talking about things that are stupid far away. Worst case scenario is that we get a bubble of space around each planet and we have to use the grav drive to change between planets. It's going to feel a little cheap. If so, why hasn't this long lost derelict station been detected? It's been just out of range of planetary radar for the last 100 years, but you know, I can cope. All the amazing stuff from the direct is still going to be amazing. Okay. Scaling of planets, what it says on the tin, I just think it would be cool to have that much space. I mean, it doesn't cost anything given how we think planets will be generated, so I can't see a reason to make them smaller, except maybe that some folks seem to find the size a bit intimidating. I kind of like that though. It gives me a sense of how big the universe is and how small I am in comparison. That's something something that doesn't usually come out in space games, and I think Might be a good thing if it did. Worst case scenario, absolute worst case scenario, is that all the planets we land on give us looped instance maps about the size of Skyrim. Kind of meh, and it's going to make Todd's infinite space comments ring a bit hollow, but honestly, that would still be a lot of map to explore. I'd be fine with it. Yeah, did he describe it as infinite space? Oh, Todd. Oh, Todd. Oh, man. Spacewalks. I doubt there's spacewalks. Maybe, like, you can jump out and just float into space, but I doubt it. Meteor showers and eclipses. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think that'll be there either. Completely unreasonable expectation. A working, fully fleshed out economy system where trading and outposts are actually meaningful. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be there. Some underwater content. I mean, sure, it's going to have bait, but we already know the existence of aurora fish. It's not a huge leap to think there will be other fishes in ocean planets. I've not heard them say anything about ocean planets. Maybe there is. I want to be able to become a stowaway on some other ship, and they warp drive with me in it, and I'll have to hijack said ship and return to my ship. I want that dreadful feeling of basically being stranded in space without my ship or crew, and I gotta find my way to return to them. Maybe in like a story mission, I could see that. I want autopilot because then I can move around the ship, repair it, something else. Just want the game to feel more free, I guess. Probably, yeah. Or you just sit in the ship. If it is the case that you have to like warp drive or grav drive to other planets, it's probably fairly quick. So you'll just get up out of your seat while the ship just sits there. And maybe you have, like they said, a crew member sitting in the pilot seat or something. But my understanding is that you can get up and walk around the ship. My unreasonable expectation is stolen from the game X4, where as a player, you have a lot of influence over trade and production via player-made star bases and trader fleet. More economy stuff, okay. I don't think I've heard anything describing a bigger or more elaborate economy than we've seen in other games. And they've said, like, Todd has done talks with developers and done interviews where he discussed, like, Oblivion, where they had a couple of like pretty early on ideas for the economy where like NPCs would walk in, they would say, oh, I want to buy that thing, and they would go to the local shop and they could buy it from the local shop, and then you couldn't go and buy that thing because there were only a set number in that shop, and this NPC now bought it. And they would run into problems where NPCs would go and randomly just decide they want to buy every tomato available in the shop. And so you go and there's just no tomatoes available until the store resets. And so then they got to figure out what to do. And there would be other cases where, you know, somebody would come in and they would just decide they were going to buy everything in the shop. Everybody decided to go to the store at the same time. So you show up to the in-game store and there's just nothing available for sale in the shop. And you're like, okay, well, this seems like a bug. It seems like a glitch. Even though technically all of the systems were working correctly, all of the NPCs just decided to go shopping at the same time. So sometimes realistic economies are not actually that useful. In a game, sometimes even when they work well, it feels like it's not working right because it's not fun. So sometimes just because somebody says they want like an economy system, if you play it through, it doesn't actually end up working the way that they would have thought. And that's what Todd's described before. Is like a lot of the time they ended up just having to pull things back because it didn't actually work the way they wanted it to. So there's that. I grew up playing every game at 25 FPS for years, so I guess my standards are low. Well, and here's the thing. If you're okay with playing at like 25 FPS, there are some people who are going to be chill with that. Like Starfield chugs like crazy every time you try to land the ship and you go into a new area. I'm sure stuff like that will be present. And if that is the case and you're okay with it, cool. Good for you. I'm glad you can tolerate those bugs, but a lot of people can't. And you're just going to see a lot of people like coping and saying, it's really not that big of a deal. The game doesn't, you can just walk through the city. Yeah, the frame rate's lower, but it doesn't matter. I'm like, okay, you don't care. For other people, they do care. And it causes like motion sickness. It can cause them to just general nausea. I'm somebody, if I'm playing a game and the frame rate, especially in first person, if it's fluctuating, even within a few frames, it makes me nauseous. I have to turn off the game. I just can't play it. And as bad as controller, mouse and keyboard, hell no, though. Yeah. Mouse and keyboard is where it really rears its ugly head. After experiencing 60 FPS, I can't go back to 30. Yeah, and I think the whole discussion over 30 versus 60 frames is interesting to me because it's, on the one hand, yeah, some of the best games of all time released at 30 FPS, and that's okay. But at the same time, there are many games that have released contemporarily nowadays that are launching at 60 FPS, and a lot of people have grown accustomed to that and have accepted it as the new standard, at least to have that as an option, at least to have it like available. So sorry, somebody's calling my work phone. I don't recognize the number. So yeah, it's just a lot of trickiness with it. I think that there's pros and cons to each side of it, though. Like the 30 FPS thing, if that allows them to build a more complex game, awesome. But if it also leads to difficulties where like the gunplay feels bad, then I'm not interested in that. Like I don't care if the game looks a little better if it feels like crap to play. But if it does in fact lock at 30 and it feels good to play, awesome. But that's something we don't know until we get our hands on it, you know? We'll have to withhold judgment. I know.